When love learns to grow old, the world had slowed down for them. Not because the clocks stopped ticking, or because the days had grown shorter, but because love, when it stays long enough, learns how to move gently. Arthur stood near the window, his blue jacket slightly unzipped, the soft fabric worn thin by decades of winters. His hair, once dark and unruly, had surrendered to time and turned the color of morning fog. He didn't notice the camera, or the quiet room around him. His eyes were lowered, thoughtful, as if he were listening to a memory instead of the present. Behind him stood Eleanor. She placed her hand on his arm, the way she had done thousands of times before, not to hold him back, not to pull him closer, but simply to remind him that she was there. Always there. She looked up at him with the same eyes that had once looked across a crowded train station 57 years ago. Those eyes had changed, softened by laughter, blurred by tears, but their language remained the same. "You are my home." Arthur turned his head slightly, just enough to see her face. He smiled, not the wide, careless smile of youth, but the quiet one that only appears when the heart feels safe. "How long was I standing here?" he asked softly. Eleanor smiled. "Long enough for me to miss you." They both laughed gently, the kind of laughter that doesn't rush, that understands silence. Chapter 1. The first hello. They met on a rainy afternoon in 1967. Arthur was late for work, holding his coat over his head, running down the street when he crashed straight into her. Papers flew everywhere, letters, notes, a small notebook filled with handwriting so neat it looked like art. "I'm so sorry," they said at the same time. Arthur knelt to help her pick up the papers, his fingers brushing hers for the first time. Something passed between them, something quiet, unannounced, but undeniable. "You write letters?" he asked, holding up one of the pages. "I write to people who don't write back," Eleanor replied with a smile. Arthur didn't understand why that answer stayed with him for years, but it did. That evening, he walked her home under one umbrella. They talked about nothing important and everything meaningful. By the time they reached her door, Arthur already knew something terrifying and beautiful had begun. "I'd like to see you again," he said. Eleanor nodded. "I was hoping you would." Chapter 2. Building a life from small moments. Their love didn't arrive like a storm. It came like the sun, slow, steady, impossible to ignore. They spent evenings cooking meals that rarely turned out right. They danced in the kitchen with no music. They argued about silly things, windows open or closed, coffee strong or mild, and apologized before pride had a chance to grow. Arthur worked long hours. Eleanor waited, not impatiently, but faithfully. She learned the sound of his footsteps. He learned the meaning of her silence. They bought a small house with peeling paint and a garden that refused to cooperate. Eleanor talked to the plants anyway. Arthur pretended not to listen, but fixed the fence every spring. They learned love was not about grand gestures. It was about showing up, again and again. Chapter 3. The years that tested them. Life, as it always does, tested their promises. They lost people they loved. They buried dreams they couldn't afford to keep. There were nights when words hurt more than silence, and mornings when forgiveness felt heavy. Once, after a terrible argument, Eleanor slept on the couch. Arthur lay awake, staring at the ceiling, realizing something frightening, that a life without her would feel like a house with no doors. At dawn, he walked to the living room and sat on the floor beside her. "I don't know how to do this perfectly," he whispered, "but I know I don't want to do it without you." Eleanor opened her eyes, reached for his hand.